Greetings, Hollywood. Welcome to pitching Steven Spielberg 3, The Vision. For 30 years, I trained for a vocation I had no inkling was my destiny, till I picked up a pen in an Eskimo village in the high Arctic, 1976. Started to write, and before I put the first letter of the first word down, I discovered what I'd be doing for the rest of my days. I was a writer. So I wrote the line, 7 words. When I looked up at Ethers, I said, when will I be published? And I instantly saw 7 what I thought at the time were tombstones, but were actually old-fashioned fairy genre books. I kind of used to illustrate at the top. And as I'm looking at these 7, I'm thinking, oh, 7 books, 7 years, 7 what? I didn't know what they were. And then he took off. Oof. Like that scene in Time Bandits when God appears and everybody goes down that corridor. He just took off and became a Mandela, streaming and streaming. I was young, and after 10 seconds or so, watching this thing stream by, I thought, that's a hell of a long time, whatever it is. So I stopped it and began writing my brains out. 20 years later, a year back from Hollywood, a Hollywood that supposedly was going to come to me, I wrote a little fairy genre book, a novella, then another, and another, a trilogy. Wow. Then 2 more. Oh, it's a book. Called it Elfindale. And another one started, Elfindale 2, T-O-O. I knew that couldn't be the final thing. And of course there was another one, Elfindale Farewell. 7 novellas all under one cover called Elfindale. Prophecy fulfilled, the 7 tombstones. But what I didn't understand was, after they were written, after they lined up, they would then go, whoa. I was 50 when I wrote them. I'm almost 64 now. And of course I self-published them with Traffic, like I mentioned. The book's a marvel and ready to go. And now Hollywood has to come to me. Want to hear a brief chapter? It's a continuation of the Arthurian legend. Kind of. It's not a repeat, not a rehash. This is a little chapter here. Merlin reluctantly places a sword in the hand of Angelica. She's 13, and he doesn't want to do it, but he has to. Major bad news coming, big war. So, he gives her the sword. And this is what happens. All of this Angelica fully understood intuitively, as the sword and scabbard placed in her hands by Merlin transformed her in a twinkling, from girl to woman, from cat to she-bear, from sorceress to sorceress. Rising calmly, she fashioned the weapon about her hips effortlessly, as if long familiar with its usage, as indeed she was. For as she unsheathed the blade and held it aloft, it whispered its name to her, a name unutterable to anyone other than herself, a name which brought back in a flash to her full remembrance of all her previous lives, right down to her earthly beginnings in the primordial sea, and before, long, long before, in galaxies that flowered, flourished, and returned to the great mix again and again and again. Needless to say, this tidal wave of information, previously barely hinted at, promptly overwhelmed her sensibilities and sent her to the mat in an ungainly, unconscious lump, despite the fact, mere seconds before, she'd been standing proudly upstretched, her sword dancing among the very stars themselves. Come and get me, Hollywood. It's beautiful. You can't really tell with this crappy lighting, but it's a beautiful book. There's the magic fish of all the wishes you hear about. So, come and get me, gang. I'm worth it. 7 film franchise. See you tomorrow.